With the Venmo debit card, you can Venmo everything. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit Venmo.me/debit to learn more. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I am going to talk about what I call the two-house solution, a riff on the two-body problem. And I'm going to talk about how I see couples with the means to do so often use getting an extra house as a way for them to, start a separation, and who does this and how it works, and whether it, in fact, does hasten impending separation or facilitate an easier separation. And I will talk about all of that as soon as I do tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was on preventive couples counseling, whether it works or not, or what I think. And there's 200 more subscriber episodes, so a lot of bang for your buck. And if the $8.99 is too much for you per month, then you can always also, that's how much it is for the subscriber episodes. But my Facebook group, where we talk about a lot of stuff in depth, which doesn't give you this podcast, but it is another place to get my content and interact with me, is only $4.99 a month. And that's a great place on the internet. Leads to a lot of my ideas for podcasts, etc. Okay, so what do I see often? I see people come in and the marriage is going bad. Otherwise they wouldn't be in, right? And then they say, actually, they have a new project. What's the new project? They're going to get a second home. Oh, that's so fun, right? On the beach or the mountains or whatever, cabin, a cottage, And so they get the second house, and lo and behold, this has happened now more times than I can count. One of them moves into it. And that was not the stated purpose of the second home, and sometimes they're usually just like an hour or two apart. This isn't like, something where people end up living very, very far from each other. But if people have the means to do so and they get a nearby second home, I have seen this happen a lot. So why do people do this? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, this happens with a lot of life changes. People are unhappy with the marriage, so they start a different life change. They get a different job or they move. The moving is really common. Like people come into couples counseling and they just moved into their house. Well, because they're trying to fix the problem with the marriage by doing some other new and exciting thing that they think will change everything. Or they have a baby, or they get a dog. A dog is a big one too. And they're really trying to not address the marital issues head on. They're trying to say, oh, maybe it's a lifestyle thing. Maybe if we were the kind of family who had a beach house, that would solve everything, right? But, it's not completely absent from the calculus. It's not an intentional thing, but it's, if one of those partners got $1 million to say, did it occur to you that if there was a separation, then one of you could live in the beach house? They might say yes, to get the $1 million in this thought experiment where you can only get the $1 million if you were being truthful. They might say yes because it is kind of in the back of their mind. And people who are more prone to do this are the ones who are more indirect in their communication. So they like to bury their head in the sand. They're more conflict averse. Often they're in what, is called now quiet quitting your marriage, or what I call, or the silent divorce. And I've done podcasts and stuff about that. And they are really living but not living. They're in kind of a purgatory, and kind of like the people in that Steve Carell show, The Four Seasons, which is really funny. And his wife in the earliest episode. They're kind of living but not living. And so they think if they get this other house, ostensibly they will be this different kind of family and this could reinvigorate everything. But also, they could separate. One of them could be in the house. And sometimes they say it like, oh, maybe like one of us could just like go out at a time and we could get like some alone time, It's never a good thing to have like a permanent place. I mean, I won't say never. I mean, maybe there's some people where that's just what they like because they're two highly sensitive people and they need a break from each other. But when this idea originates against a backdrop of marital conflict, I've not seen it be very useful, because then you just start doing that. You just start going to the other house, and it's usually not we switch off like people intend. It usually turns into one person goes to the other house a lot. And then one person has the other house and that's just their house. And then they're divorced. And so if you are in this situation, what do I recommend? Well, do you want to work on the marriage or not? Like sometimes people get divorced almost like because it's like a snowball rolling downhill. It just kind of starts and then it picks up speed and it feeds on itself. And if you don't actually want to be divorced, then doing this kind of backdoor way to getting divorced isn't going to help anything. It's going to make you feel like, oh, we're so evolved. Here we are taking extra time from each other. But in reality, that time is the last thing you need if you're in this sort of dynamic where there's this kind of unspoken conflict. What you need is to talk about the issues and to potentially work on the issues. The opposite. You need more time together and hopefully talking and working through stuff and connecting and being close, not further. The people who do this, it's like they already struggle with distance in their relationship and then they're like, oh, I know what would make this better. Let's just live separately, temporarily. No, this is why trial separations don't usually work. Because the people that think about doing trial separations tend to be the more risk-averse people. Obviously, it's literally the name, trial separations. Who wants to do a trial? Somebody who's more risk-averse, more conflict-averse, right? Those kind of people, they don't need more distance. They need more closeness. So if the problem in your marriage is you guys can't speak openly, you don't directly communicate, there's all this silence, all this literal, not literal, but figurative distance, then putting literal distance in is going to amplify that, right? You're not going to come back together after you've already gotten this routine going where you're separate. It's almost impossible to imagine. You get into this routine and then you just live separately. And it's kind of like a face-saving way at the beginning to say, oh, I want to separate and to avoid the idea of working on it. Because you don't say, oh, I want to go out to our beach house and the other person's bursts into tears and says we need couples counseling. No, the other person, especially in a dynamic like what I described with two relatively avoidant people, will say, okay, hon, I'll see you when I see you next week. And because you're not actually stating that there's an issue. But if you want a profound amount of separate time within the backdrop of a low intimacy and low closeness marriage, what is that saying? That's saying that the marriage basically doesn't exist. The marriage at that point becomes a marriage on paper. And then you basically start to live separate. And so I've not really seen that more distance or trial separation is helpful to a pair of avoidance. They need probably the opposite, to be like handcuffed together and put into a room together where they have to talk about their issues, Like if it was like a reality show or something. Obviously, I'm not literally recommending a use of handcuffs or whatever. I don't know how people think. But I'm saying figuratively, you need more closeness. And so that's what couples counseling can do. Couples counseling, especially for two avoidant type of people, it forces them into the same space. Could be virtual space, obviously, but at least forces them to talk about their relationship for 45 minutes a week, which is often 45 minutes more than they were doing before. And also, if you're living separately and taking little breaks from each other, or there's all these people that are like, oh, like, he went on a guy's trip last week. Now I'm going on a guy's trip next week. Then I'm going with my sister. Then he's going with his brother. It's like, what weekends are you together? Y'all are basically divorced, You're basically splitting custody, without saying that you're splitting custody, because you're switching off the children. And frequently too much switching off the children, it's like, well, I guess we don't even have to be married because we're both living our best life. We're used to not being with each other. Obviously, everybody gets breaks all the time. So then you get used to that being your half time there. And then what is the natural conclusion is that split custody and divorce would be better. And so this isn't to say that somebody should never go on a girl's trip or never go on a guy's trip, but if you're already feeling disconnected in the marriage, having more fun with other people that are not your partner, it's just going to show you this vision of what life could be like. And believe me, that's not what divorce would actually be like, because you would have the kids completely solo. Your finances are completely solo. There's a lot more stress. So it can almost give too rosy a glow of what it would be like to be divorced if before the divorce you were in this almost semi-divorced state where you had all of these breaks from each other. So like a normal, healthy marriage, okay, like a securely attached marriage where you're saying I love you, you're having sex, you're close to each other, cool, like go on your guy trip or your girl's trip. But if it's a lonely, disconnected marriage and you're underscoring that and amplifying that by constantly getting away from each other, then that can really make things worse. And at something that could have been theoretically solved, a marriage that could have been worked on, that could have grown closer, now both people won't because they're used to this idea of being apart. And frequently, by the way, these people will have had marriages that they saw growing up between their parents that were very similar, maybe for different reasons. For example, the father was on the road all the time for work. So they basically saw the mother be alone. And then when the father would come home, then he would just hang out with the kids, and then the mother got her break. And so they were basically just splitting off time with the kids, switching off. And then that is what that adult child has learned is, how marriage looks. But frequently, the only reason that those people didn't get divorced was because it was a prior generation. They weren't really very happy. Or situations where the mother would go up to the beach house and the father would stay working during the week in the city. Those sorts of things. Some of those couples were happy, but a lot of them weren't. This is a culture where you're supposed to say that everything that you do on your own for your self-actualization is wonderful and paramount and healthy, and that's really not true within a marriage or a relationship. You have to spend time together, and it's a ridiculous thing to have to say, but you have to say it because of the counterpoint that's all over the media, which is just spend infinity time completely alone, and that's, great. No, that's not great because you're in a relationship. So you wouldn't say, I'm just as good of a parent no matter if I see my kid or I don't, No, you have to hang out with your child to be a good parent. You have to spend time with your child. Everyone knows that, you see your child. And if you don't see your child, right, then you cannot say that you are close to your child. And it's the exact same thing when you're married. You cannot say that you're close to somebody who you don't really see. And if you are having to switch off through a season of life because one person got a job that's hectic and the other person's parenting, and then, there's a baby and the baby's up at night, okay. But if this is the regime, if this is the routine and what is considered, just the perpetuity of this relationship is that people are going to be mostly doing their own thing, then that is parallel lives. And while the two people individually may be happy with what they're doing, it is unusual for that to be a happy marriage long term. And I do talk about some of this idea in my podcast, although we do what we want marriage and why it leads to sexlessness when her drive drops. Because these people that are so used to he does this, she does this, he does that, she does that, and they're all separate, parallel play, then when she doesn't want to have sex anymore, they don't. And they can't, really, because the whole entire culture is that we only do what we want to do most at this very moment. And there's no kind of doing anything or getting in the mood or, even going to a place you don't want to go for dinner. If you don't even eat food you don't want to eat, there's couples that eat separately every single night because they don't want to eat at the same time and they don't want to eat the same food. Well, something tells me that's a solvable problem, right? You could just kind of not eat your favorite food at your favorite time in service of having that time together. But if the culture of the marriage is that everybody does exactly what they want whenever they want to, well, then when people don't want to ever hang out in a certain way, whether that's sexually or conversations or whatever, then they don't, and then there's no more marriage. So it's really important to think about kind of, are you spending enough time together? Many couples are not. Many couples are just switching off, and then the separate homes is an extension of that, separate hobbies, separate homes, and then it's just really not a marriage. And then people say, oh, well, I'm surprised I never expected to be divorced. But yet, if you've been living separate lives for 10 years, how'd you not expect to be divorced? We're divorced already for a decade. So it's an interesting thought, and if you are thinking of buying an extra house, do some deep introspection and think, why? Am I doing this as some sort of safety net? And should that be the canary in the coal mine that tells me I should go into couples counseling and I should actually work on the relationship, or at least think individually or do individual work to introspect about, why am I buying this second house? Why are we doing it with this idea that we're going to get even more time away from each other, which is not what we want, which is not what we need, really? Or do we? Do we want that? And should we save our money and go to couples counseling or just separate? I don't ever say just separate when there's children involved. You got to do your work, but you got to be honest with yourself with these things. And you got to say, what is the meaning of all the time and physical distance that we're putting between ourselves as a couple, and what does it represent about the relationship? All right, I hope you guys found this interesting, and thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to y'all soon.
Mamá, papá, mi cuerpo crece a un ritmo alarmante y la ropa que me compren ahora me quedará muy pequeña muy pronto. Pero su billetera no tiene que sufrir por la moda con los precios bajos de la vuelta a clases de Amazon. Amazon, gasta menos, sonríe más.
Great day.